I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Planning and Zoning meeting, March 5th, 2015. Our first order of business will be our public hearings, and we have 4 of those tonight. And our first public hearing will be Section 405.185 OPR District Outdoor Public Recreation. Mr. Hamp, would you take the floor and bring us up to date?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am very glad to see the birds on the bat.
Yeah, me too.
Did you hear if they won today or not?
I
haven't had a chance
been
to hear
home.
either. But I'm glad it's that time of year. First item we have is a public hearing for a proposed text amendment to Section 405.185, the OPR District, ADM 71. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, my planning and zoning report, and the public hearing notice. The Warren County Fair Association board members were invited to the February 5th planning and zoning meeting to discuss special event permit approval process and minimum plan requirements, and also to discuss temporary overnight camping out at their facility within the OPR district. And that's what we have tonight. I got proposed changes to that section to discuss and
Sounds good.
work towards approving that.
Does anyone want to speak on behalf or against this public hearing at this time? Hearing none, we'll close that public hearing and open up our second public hearing. Section 405.050 definitions. Mr. Ham, floor is back to you.
This is a proposed text amendment to Section 405.050 definitions and interpretation, ADM 73. I'd also like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, my planning and zoning report, and the public hearing notice. During the January 20th, 2015 Board of Aldermen meeting, the City Attorney Greville and the board discussed guidelines for a new in-home daycare definition, and that's what this text amendment is for, creating that definition within Section 405.050.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Anyone else to speak on behalf or against that proposal tonight? Hearing none, we'll close that public hearing and open up our third public hearing, Section 405.210 home occupations. Mr. Ham?
This is a proposed text amendment to Section 405.210 home occupations, ADM 74. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, my planning and zoning report, and the public hearing notices. This is a result of creating that definition, so it'll also change the section over home occupations and Appendix A.
Thank you again. Anyone else to speak on behalf or against that proposal? Hearing none, and our final public hearing for this evening will be Appendix A, listing of permitted and conditional uses.
This is a proposed text amendment to Appendix A, ADM 75. I'd like to ask to make part of the public hearing record the municipal code by reference, my planning and zoning report, and the public hearing notice. And this is to change Appendix A to allow the new definition.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to speak on behalf of the fourth public hearing tonight? Hearing none, we'll close our public hearings for this evening and open up the regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for March the 5th. And our first order of business will be minutes from our last meeting, February 6th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 5, 2014 meeting as submitted.
2015.
Okay, I was reading on the other one.
Yeah, it is 2015. I guess we should change that, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
February 5, 2015 it should be.
And here it's February 6th.
But this is the actual minutes.
Right, I know, I was just reading from here. So, all right, we have a motion by Mr. Costello. Entertain a second.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Second by Mrs. Scott to approve the minutes as submitted. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
I will abstain. I was absent.
We have motion passes 5-0 with 1 abstention and 3 absent, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Are we in the process of filling our final spot?
So you're trying?
trying?
You know anybody to recommend?
Okay, we'll look into that then.
And I'll make sure Melody revises that to 2015.
Thank you. All right, so next order of business will be the special event permit, the mud bog. You want to bring us up to speed, Jack, or you want me to turn the
Yes.
floor over? Okay.
This is a special event permit application, SEP number 10, approval request for Warrenton Band Boosters Mud Bog to be held out at the Warren County Fairgrounds for the event to be on May the 9th. Ms. Scott's here, who was representing that. She has turned in a revised plan, an updated plan, to try to help us make the decision on that. And there was also a note in there from Chief of Police Howdy Shell, and I briefly discussed that with Linda, so she's aware of some of the concerns that the city staff and the Chief of Police had.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
State your name for the record, and thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Good night. Good evening. I'm Linda Scott, and I'm the president of the Warrenton High School Band Boosters. And I'm here to ask for permission to have a 4th annual mud bog for the high school band as their fundraiser. It's our major fundraiser. I'm not for sure what you guys need to ask me, but I can tell you from the plan and everything, I did a color aerial so you can see it as well. This building doesn't exist anymore, so I would run my track this way since there's nothing here. I put caution tape each direction so that nobody goes past there, still allowing the vehicles to come out. This is where they would enter. In the exhibit hall, I would like to do, if we can pull it together, a silent auction, and that will go towards Children's Miracle Network. They get 100% proceeds of what we collect there. Other than that, we would just use the pavilion. The fair board would use the pavilion because they sell alcohol. That has nothing to do with us. And they do the concessions. We would do our t-shirt sales. And then 50-50 in our gun raffle, like we did last year. MMOR would be doing the event. So they have plenty of people to help keep this going the right way, because, this is something they do all the time. Instead of bringing in an outsider to help us this time, and there won't be no youth class. We eliminated that. We eliminated the fast track to eliminate the problem for last year. And so it's just a pit that'll be approximately 125 feet. And then you have double the shutdown of 200 feet after the mud pit. And you still have all this, like we said, which is all open for us because we don't have no other activities going on. Is there anything?
So-
Go ahead.
By the elimination of the fast track,
Mhm.
explain to me exactly how that would prevent what happened last year.
Okay. The fast track was just dry dirt. So I'm not sure what happened with the driver or whatever. But being in the sticky pit, which is pretty deep, it allows it to stay, you know what I mean, pretty sticky into the mud pit. I don't think any blown motors. I don't pull in the kind of attraction of the trucks that they do. Because everybody knows it's for a fundraiser. So I don't attract the big guys. Plus, we moved the pit directly in the middle now, so we're approximately 50 feet from each side of the spectators now, and with an 18-foot wide pit in the middle.
And what was it last year?
It was an 18-foot wide pit last year too, but it was shoved closer over here, and it was 25 feet from the spectators because I also had the dry track for the fast track, which was 25 feet from the spectators on the stage side. So now everything's moved to the middle, allowing 50 for more safety. I mean, we do have the hog panel fence that comes all the way down, along with the metal guardrail. And we also have, I'm sorry, I cannot think, the Jersey wall as well. It also runs along here. The only place that we don't have the hog panel fence is in front of the stage. So, this would also be where people are watching to make sure nobody crosses while a truck is racing or being pulled back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Scott?
Go ahead.
So basically, you're running the trucks the opposite direction that you were running them last year,
no, I would be running the same direction as last year.
okay?
This is where the exhibit hall that was hit by the rail last year is now gone. So this is completely open where they would have the fair. I don't have nothing down there. People don't go down there. There's no reason for anybody to be down there.
Okay.
So, you'd mentioned that you don't have the blown motors and things like that. Do you have class restrictions?
We do. We do.
Kind of limit the not necessarily the horsepower, but the types of vehicles that are going to run.
Yes, there is restrictions. I mean, for each type, each set of class, there's another rule for each class. You know, X amount of tires or whatever. They have an open class, which allows the rails and etc. But
So you will
really,
have-
I think
you will have rails, they just will be running
if I
in the
have a
pit.
rail, honestly, it'll probably be one.
Okay.
If I have one, or maybe two.
But they'll run in the wet pit as opposed to on the
Yeah,
hard
they will
track.
not be on the dry. There is no dry anymore. I eliminate that 100%.
And you talked about MMOR,
Yes.
and it refers to it in here every time I see it as an acronym. Is that an organization that runs these mud bogs?
Yes.
And that's- out
It's
of Union?
Missouri's Motors Off-Road.
Okay, off-road, okay, that's what, and that's out of Union, the
Yes.
people that run that? But I noticed that they don't take any liability for this at all through,
No, we carry the insurance ourselves.
I saw that.
Mhm.
And I did see where the fire department said that it would have to be shut down if they had to go on call.
Absolutely. I have the ambulance and the fire department both there on standby if anything were to happen. If an emergency would be so big that both of our teams would have to leave, or even just the fire department or just the ambulance, the event will shut down until I have the backup come in, and they will call in Wright City, I believe is the first choice.
Okay.
And then we can resume back into the event.
I like that drawing up there. It's got the dimensions on it.
Thank you.
Where did you get those dimensions?
I have friends that do the work under the MoDOT contracts, and they got their drafter involved for me. Because it was going to cost like $5,000 to get that from our local guys. And the band does not have that kind of money.
Then you think they are accurate.
Yeah, they pulled it up. Underneath it, if you go see the close-up on the table, I have it on the table. You can see that it's all been pulled up and just redrawn out and put the dimensions in.
Well, the one thing I noticed under the mud bog contract, it gave the mud pit requirements. The defined walls, the width, the length of the pit. The pit must be 100 to 150 feet in length and 20 to 25 feet wide. Your pit's only 18 feet.
I can make it bigger.
Have you got room?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I have...
What dimensions would you change? Because you've only got, I'm on the wrong one.
Well, with the 18-foot pit, right now, I'm 50 foot from each side of both sides of the spectators.
Yeah.
Stage side and the concession side
Mhm.
stand. So, right
Your-
there's...
Your total width of this whole thing from side to side is 119 feet. To be able to get the mud pit to the 20-foot width, you would have to have 120 feet, and you only got 119.
Okay.
That's, you can't go any farther if that's all the room there is.
Right. Well, this is the first time for me using MMOR, and we had always done an 18-foot pit, which is double the amount of truck, side by side, so there's plenty of room.
MMOR people, can they do less than 8 or 20 foot? I don't know who's here representing them,
They are, but the track width is 88 foot wide. If they're in the center of
Can
the
you,
track.
can you come on,
Yeah.
sorry about that. This is for the people's, in the
Absolutely.
viewing public needs to hear too. Thank you, sir. State your name again.
My name's Paul Long,
Thank
I'm
you,
with
Mr.
the Warren
Umby.
County Fair Board, and I can't see the diagram up there,
Right.
and I wasn't quite following his question, but the dimensions of that track width is roughly 88 foot wide. And if they're putting a 25 foot pit wide in the middle of it, that's still leaving you what, if she had 50 feet from each side, so center of the pit over would be roughly your 50 feet, if I'm thinking right,
they show it here at 50 and a half,
from the
Foot.
edge of the pit.
and that's the full
This
width
way
of
and
the
this
track.
Right,
That's the full
okay.
width.
All right, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the total width of the track, like I said, 88 feet is what I consider usable space, on the track.
Mhm.
So you're still roughly 40 feet from, 40, 80 on each side. I would be considering that number from the center of the pit, is what we've always done the events before.
Yeah, but look down there at the bottom, Paul, it's, the track, according to this drawing, is only 119 foot wide. That's from,
Ron, I think that's going from the
That's
front of the
people.
bleachers to the front of the stage.
yeah, yeah.
And-
Right.
and
Now, that's
it-
not in.
it
He's
does
saying with
show-
the
it
pit
does
and
show
the
the
50
track
foot on each
median.
side is 120 some odd feet.
Yeah.
You would just
Right.
have to, you just have to shorten that 50 foot. You're gonna center the track, and then you might have
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
23 feet on
everything's
each
done
side.
before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So that the drawing is just off from
Yeah.
what's presented in front of it, I'm with you.
right, right.
But in all practicality, with moving the track from where it was in the past, it was always up against that guardrail to allow
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah.
You just gain roughly 20 feet
Mhm.
from the track to your grandstand area.
So I think the question of concern was, and I think you've covered it, is that he's questioning MMOR requires you to have 20 to 25 feet on each side, and the way you're saying it does.
Yeah.
From center of the pit.
That's what I mean, center of the pit.
Absolutely.
By this drawing, it doesn't, but
Yeah, now that's from edge
if
to
you
edge.
can get that, yes, no
Yeah,
problem.
that's from edge to edge.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
from the outside of the pit, not the
Right.
inside.
Right, and I'm just saying that from past events, it has gained 20 feet from the fence that was
Yeah.
there before. So
Yeah.
instead of getting closer to the stands, it has gotten farther
Further.
away.
Yeah, because to the center, that would make that, approximately 59 feet away from the spectators now.
Is the
On each
insurance part of it, the minimum they expect, 50 feet from the edge of the pit?
My name is Gary Bannerman, I'm
Thank you, Mr.
president of
Bannerman.
MMOR.
Okay, I saw your name on
All,
there.
your-
Thanks.
all your safety stuff comes from the NFPA.
Mhm.
You all can get a copy of this for $50.
We trust you.
Or you can contact your fire department, they might get you one for 35. But being chairman of the board where I'm at, I got mine free.
Oh,
But you're more than welcome to look at it tonight if you want. But here's where all the safety comes from.
Yeah,
This is what your insurance companies base their premiums on. So, but the way Linda's got this drawn, there shouldn't be no problem. If we're short, as far as the spectators being 50 foot away, we won't let nobody sit on the first two row bleachers.
they will end up being,
Well,
Not far enough
we
away.
had to do that
Yeah.
last year. We moved them up to the top
yeah.
in order to be
There's-
safer after the accident.
If you made, if you made the pit 20 foot wide by
Right.
this drawing, you'd be 49 and a half
Right.
feet on each side.
I get what you're saying.
And
That's-
and
that's
then you're
right.
requiring 50 foot from each side of the box.
Right.
But if you come.
And I don't see anything way on the drawing that you can widen it out any.
Right.
Maybe you can, I don't know.
So, well, the only option we would have is say, like I said, don't let spectators sit on the first two
Yeah,
row
yeah.
bleachers to get our 50 foot.
I mean, I can run that off.
Or maybe those dimensions aren't quite right.
Now,
Yeah, I mean,
I'll-
well, I had them out there with a survey wheel and everything, honestly. They were out there with us.
Yeah.
All right,
On the
We
state
worked hard on
side,
this one.
No.
just your pits for the vehicles.
But yeah, and they
Well, but
come
the-
always, MMR, they've been put
Well,
on
yeah,
many
but your-
races
your,
and carrying the same
the
entrance
end,
that I'll be
your
carrying.
guardrail is what you
But
measured
there
off
was
of.
always, during our fair time,
Right,
there's
but
always
see
the fast
You guys need to be-
track
if you're 80 foot
next
up, picking
to
up on
it,
the
so
mic.
it's a lot
17 is
less than what we're
119.
doing now.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't see the, they got, let's see, where is it?
Here's the dimensions, is where your 50 foot, 50'6".
While the gentleman's looking.
I don't see the 150 foot aren't here for each end fenced off for spectators. I don't see where that's shown on the drawing.
I'm not
Do you
for
have
sure.
that on there?
What is-
I'm not for sure what you're asking.
The end of the, that's MMOR's requirement.
Okay.
Let me get down here.
The pit must be 100 to 150 feet in length is what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I do it in 125.
And that's
Approximately.
just an idea, depends on the location.
Right.
We have had made our pits 100 foot if we don't have enough shutdown area. So that's just an idea for the communities to go by.
Okay.
So that's why I went with the pit at 125, because of the length of the track. That gave us 250 feet shut down before the end of the track.
Mhm.
So we doubled what they would be into.
This is the outer area, must be at least 50 feet on each side of the mud pit and 150 feet on each end fenced off for spectators.
Well,
That'd
that
be
on
at
each
each end
end,
of the
that
track.
at 150 feet, we like to have a minimum of 150 feet. A good rule of thumb, if you ask a couple of the racers that are here tonight, they like twice the distance to get shut down
Yeah.
as the pit is, and that's what Linda has here. And then the other 150 on the other end, when they're running through the pit and they get stuck, we gotta have 150 foot of cable, to
Yeah.
pull them out.
Yeah, I've
So-
seen that. Yeah.
So then that's why that area is fenced off, so nobody crosses over that cable.
Right. And we put security. Oops.
So these dimensions
Right,
aren't
where they're
set in
coming
stone then, what you got here?
I personally meet with, say, the fair boards, community clubs, and we sit down and go over, we look at the location and say, well, we can only do a 100-foot pit in order to have enough shutdown area. We try to make it as safe as we can. I have a son that's a lieutenant on the fire department, and if I don't do something right, he's chewing on me on the way home.
Will there be somebody out there from your group when they actually set this pit up and all?
Yes, there can be.
Okay. Well,
I met with Warrenton Fair, the first race we done here several years ago, and helped them lay it out and stayed while they built it. And they knew what they were doing, so I haven't had to come back the last few years.
Do you sign off somehow that
Well,
meets your standards? Or?
I look at it when I get there, and if there's a change got to be made, the fair board is more than willing to make the change.
Okay.
Yes. And we have the high lift and everything there to fix or and dress up the pit as necessary.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anybody else have any questions?
The only other question I had,
I think Ms. Costello.
at the end of the track, in the direction that you're gonna run, I didn't see on the diagram, and if it's there, forgive me for asking, but what will you be using as a barrier or barricade specifically?
We can do hay bales.
Hay bales?
Mhm.
Any other reinforcement? Last year's episode was obviously
Yeah.
it's the first time we've ever seen or heard of anything
Right.
like that. But if we've got a vehicle that's at full throttle for whatever reason, I'm not convinced that hay bales are going to stop that
Right.
momentum.
Well, and like I was saying, we would continue running this way because now this exhibit hall is now gone. This is all open. There's nothing here.
Right.
And that's obviously probably about double of that almost without going out there with a survey well.
My concern is not that, I know you'll intend to keep spectators completely out of that area,
Yeah.
regardless of barricade or not.
Right.
And I know you're serious about that.
Yeah.
What we all know, though, is that sometimes, either through inattention or just simply people not maybe monitoring, say, children as much as they should,
Mhm.
some might wander off. And
Right.
it's just nice to know that even if some kids wander over there and slip past the best efforts of everyone to keep them out of their way,
Mhm.
that there's something there that could keep a vehicle that, for one reason or another, is out of control, from causing a tragedy.
Right.
There's enough extra Jersey barriers on the facility that can be placed at the end of the track behind your hay bales.
Okay, so, and that's the only other concern I have, is that,
Right.
you know, something that we can reasonably believe
Right.
would stop the momentum of a vehicle in case there's a child that wandered over
Right.
there without anyone really realizing it.
But if necessary, these are 2 bleachers at the end. I can always block them off as well.
Yeah.
Nobody goes there because that is the end of the pit. So, because the bleachers sit here for the driver's side, the racers, and then you still got all these bleachers here, you know.
Right. Well, the kids will go everywhere on the fairgrounds, so.
I get that. I understand
Mr.
what you're
Olney can
saying.
probably tell you that.
Whether you want them to or
Right.
not.
Yeah,
I
whether you
understand
want them
that.
to or not.
Well, I can say during the open class that Linda mentioned, that's when we have the faster vehicles.
Mhm.
And there's always somebody from MMOR down at the end not letting people
To
through.
keep that clear.
Yeah.
And as long as all those efforts are made,
Yeah.
you know, because none of us ever want to have to see,
Absolutely not.
you know,
Uh,
it turn out badly.
No.
I do have Roy and Donna Butts here tonight. They do have a rail or a skimmer, if you want to call it.
Mm.
And they wear all the necessary safety stuff, the Hans neck brace, everything.
And they have the shutdown.
Well, and we
Remote
want the
shutdown.
I've
participants to
not
be
ever,
safe too, but.
I'll be
but-
honest with you, they stop quicker than anybody I've ever seen. And they race all over the United, all
Right.
over.
But yeah.
They race the national events too, so.
We want participant safety to be good,
Right.
but there's an
Absolutely.
assumption of risk as a participant that always goes along with those
What
things.
we try to
because the
implement when
spectator
we
risk is the
can,
concern.
we don't let anybody sit from the shutdown area past the shutdown area.
Right, okay.
Because that's where most
Yeah.
problems
And
happen.
that's what I was saying, we can easily, because I am a caution tape, I love caution tape. I'll put it everywhere. And I can block out these bleachers. Nobody sits there.
Anybody else have any questions? Hearing none? Entertain a
If I
motion.
say one more thing,
Yes, sir.
MMOR is having a motorsports safety awareness class on March the 21st. It'll be at Union. MMOR is paying for it. We have an instructor coming down from Mizzou to teach it. It's a 4-hour class. You'll get a certificate for it. Then after that, some of the racers are bringing their vehicles, be hands-on, explaining what safety features is on the vehicles. We got Roy and Donna's going to bring their rail. We've got some other vehicles coming. We've got pulling tractors coming. I got word today there's a stock car coming out of Kansas City. So you're more than welcome to come. Be March 21st at 9 o'clock at the Union High School.
I think we'll sign Mr. Deach up for that. Mr. Hamp, can we look into that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. See. What you need, huh?
You step to, if you have a copy,
Come on up.
just state the name.
I'll stand with you.
I'm Donna Butts with MMOR. The only thing I wanted to add about the safety, Mr. Costello was worried about people being past the end and different times. Not that this makes it 100% safe, but as a red flag person, I run the red flag, and I have to check the end of the track to make sure nobody's down in that area before the green flag person is given the to-go sign. So, that's another fail-safe, we hope, to stop people from being down in the area where they're not supposed to be, and we don't let cars go, or racers go, until that area is safe. It doesn't always
Sure.
make it fail-safe, but I just wanted to add that in as another safety feature that our club does do to try to keep people out of the area where they're not supposed to be.
Okay.
And I flag more than half the classes, so
Yeah.
I can guarantee, and Roy red flags a lot of the other ones, so I mean, I know that happens, but, and occasionally you have a wanderer, like you said, but
Right.
anyway, that was just
Okay.
something.
Well, thank you for
Thank
you all
you.
coming.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming
Bill.
tonight and being a part of this.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the special event permit for the Mud Bog for the Band Boosters fundraiser as submitted, with them addressing all of the safety concerns that have been discussed here this evening.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cullum, to approve the special event permit for the Mud Bog with all the safety features in place that were discussed tonight. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Cullo?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
And Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with 3 absences. Did that go in front of the Board of Aldermen next?
I don't know.
Jack, will that go in front of the Board of Aldermen next, or is
Yes.
that? Okay.
On the 17th.
On the 17th?
Yes.
And thanks once again for everybody being here and participating in this.
Thank you.
Thanks for the better drawings. We appreciate that.
Yes.
Next order of business would be the OPR District Outdoor Public Recreation, Section 405.185.
Once again, this is a text amendment approval request concerning Section 405.105, the OPR district, regarding minimum plan requirements and temporary overnight camping within that district. And Mr. Paul's here, Mr. Allenby's here with the Fair Board if you have any specific questions for him. And did you bring, Brandy's bringing up, he did bring a drawing in tonight. It's a base drawing that we've got a copy of.
And this, the approval process would be basically the same process as what we did for the mud bog, except if they wanted to do camping, that would just be included on their drawing or as part of their permit?
Currently, the overnight camping's not even an option through the SE, through a special event permit approval, and that's what we're revising the code to make it where if someone wanted to have a camping event out there, they can apply for the special event permit where it would come through for your approval and the board's approval.
Okay, my question is it a separate permit or is it just part of the process? So if, let's say at the mud bog they were in camp, then is that a separate process or is it all combined in one process? That's the
I would
question.
say if they know that's going to be part of their event, they can just include it all. No different than like the chamber did where they had several different activities going on at the same time. They would just list all that in their documentation that they submit. So yes, it could be approved in one.
Doesn't the current forms, Jack, ask if you're camping or not?
Yes,
But it's not allowed.
currently it's not allowed. Why it's on there, I can't explain,
The
Paul.
forms already set up for it, that it would be, that question would be asked on that permit.
And the special event permit application, as you know, is pretty simple. You
Right.
can just put in exactly what
Oh, yeah,
activities you're planning.
exactly.
And then you would, if you are planning camping, I'm sure you would take your map and show the areas where they would be,
Right.
show where you'd have your restrooms or whatever other facilities you would need, parking and that, to help them make their decision and help the board make their decision.
Anybody else have any questions for Jack or Paul?
I've got one for Jack. So when we're talking about amending this, it says sports fields and fairgrounds. So could this expand into, we have the soccer fields, and then people could be putting in special event permits to have camping and bonfires and such there on the soccer fields of the sports complex?
The city's facility, yes, that's within the OPR district, so yes, that would be included. But it also says with, part of the process is with written permission of the property owner, so I'm not sure what the board would say as far as if that would be permitted or not. I'm sure it would depend on what's submitted.
You would have to go before the board first to get permission to have the event, wouldn't you? Just like they have to go to the fair board to have the event,
They would need to bring written permission, yes, sir.
so they'd have to get that from the town board. They are the governing bodies of the fields out there, the ball fields and all up there, right? Okay.
That'd be a pretty hard sell, I'll just say. Because that's what we're trying to be careful about, not opening up a can of worms, but yet at the same time, helping those that this makes sense for. Just saying.
Well, since both the fairgrounds property and the city's complex is
Part of.
that's basically the only two areas that are the OPR
Exactly.
district. Unless you want us to revise this section of code even farther to exclude the city's ground, but I don't see where that would be good.
No.
Because who knows what the future brings.
Exactly.
Right.
There might be some event that would be great to have out
Exactly.
at the complex and put it to use,
Exactly.
not to be competition.
Maybe the
No,
Grateful,
I mean-
maybe the Grateful Dead's gonna reunite.
We're not saying, I was exactly
So to
thinking
speak,
that, but I didn't want to say.
from the last meeting.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's,
Very good. Good discussion.
Okay.
Anybody got any other questions?
I would just like to ask, as far as the minimum plan requirements, during the previous discussion, we talked about having all the plans drawn to scale. Now, I know like on the one Lisa submitted tonight, they did their best to draw it to scale off of Google, and I know that Paul tried to do one to scale too. Is that acceptable? Do you want me to just leave it as a detailed plan and scratch out the drawn to scale? What do you guys feel comfortable with? Just to make sure, moving forward, everybody's on the same page for what we can accept. I mean, Linda's drawings dramatically improved from the first one, and I believe that was our goal.
I like that drawing, it's got the dimensions on it, because I can read the dimensions.
Well, dimensions are helpful, but I think when Mr. Hanf is talking about drawing to scale, you can dimension a drawing and it still not visibly be to scale.
Right.
My opinion is that because it's city staff that ultimately has to review these and make the preliminary recommendations or determinations of whether it fits for a number of different reasons and interpret where it may or may not meet the requirements, we should give city staff all of the tools they need to get that job done. And if you feel like the drawings being to scale is a critical part of knowing what you're looking at and being able to ultimately provide the applicant with the feedback they need to get it through, avoiding delays and things like that, then I think drawing to scale is, if that's what you as staff members need, then I think we should support that.
Yes. I agree.
Is that what you're requesting?
I was just asking
No,
for
yeah.
clarification because that has definitely been part of previous conversations
Right.
with the P and Z Commission, and I'm sure when it gets to the Board of Aldermen, that might be part
Well,
of the
let me ask it a
discussion, too.
different way then. Is it more difficult when you look at applications if they're not to scale?
Yes.
All right, then,
Leave the
me
in
personally,
scale
I
in.
believe that they should be to scale.
And the onus should be on them, not us. Ms. Scott? I know you had something.
Well, what was presented earlier, was that to scale?
The one from Paul, yes. That
Okay,
one's
so the
to
one that's up
scale.
there now, you would consider to scale?
Yeah, he's got the scale on it, the 1 inch equals 40 feet.
Okay. So you're not necessarily looking for something that's drawn up by a engineer?
It wouldn't have to be
you're
done
just
by an
looking
engineer.
for
just-
something
And that's what I was commenting on, even the drawing that Linda turned in, it's somewhat to scale because they took a picture off of Google and traced it. I'm sure that's how they did it. So it's to a scale, it's just not physically labeled 1 inch equals whatever.
Right.
But you could realistically
Do that.
try to verify.
One inch is every
Yeah.
100 foot.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. I'm sorry that that's
Yeah.
not on there, but yeah, 1 inch equals every.
But I was just wanting to make sure
Yeah, so if
on
what's,
your feeling,
Oh, no doubt.
the commission's feeling, was that too strict? Are we happy with that? Because like I say, that, as you guys all saw the first drawing, that makes it 100 times easier to process than the original drawing that was
Well,
submitted.
I will state for the record that your commission wants your job to be easier.
All right.
If it makes you happy, it makes me happy.
You're happy, we're tickled to death.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Good discussion. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve section 405.18 as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion by Mrs. Scott, second by Mr. Dickey to approve the motion to 405.185 OPR District Outdoor Public Recreation text amendment as submitted. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with 3 absent. Thanks for everyone's input. Next order of business will be
Is there, I mean, since we're on this here, is there any other questions or is there anything else we'd like to build on? Because I know last month's meeting, I mean, this is kind of the rough draft, is where, what I came up with to start with after, you know, we talked. Is, what more would you like to see this go to? Or is this gonna be something that the city can work with in future for, if we was to make a copy, which I know there's limited organizations that we would be giving this out for special event
Right.
permits. Primarily more concerned for the fair board's use for submitting permits for all fair related events. Is this something we can build on or what can I do different?
Paul, I think it would be great if you could build on that and even try to incorporate like Linda did, where it's actually got the whole site.
Okay,
That way there in the future, because you know you're hoping to get the people in for the overnight camping and that, then you'd be able to show where they're really at, you know, on your
Right,
overall
and-
site.
right, the last
And then-
discussion was to confine to the areas that, because you said the buildings weren't moving, the stages weren't moving. That's why, you know, I started with that.
And I agree, I think that's a great beginning, but on that, you really wouldn't be able to show where they would be planning on camping.
Right,
So
and we can
if
go
you're
to the
applying-
larger scale map
Right.
that you can get from, I mean, if you need me to come in here something 4 foot square, I need to kind of start working on that now too.
Right.
You know, it's where I'm going with it, you know, because will we submit a permit in the next year for camping? I don't know. I just want to be prepared
There for
for
the-
what you're looking for when we get to that point, you know.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, if this is a good start for the special deals, like when we want to do a fall demo derby or mud run or whatever, then, I mean, if you're content with that, I'm tickled. You know, because that shows the area where our safety precautions would be. And like I said, the bleachers aren't moving, the kitchen isn't moving, outlying areas are not affected. So to me, that's your concentrated area. If that's good for those special events, then like I said, we can start working on something to prepare if we ever get the question for a camping permit type deal. But I just want to make sure that this works for you all.
Sounds good.
Yep, they voted 6-0.
Well,
Then it'll be presented to the
Thank you,
board.
sir.
so.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Next order of business will be section 405.050, the definitions for the text amendment.
Yeah, this is the proposed text amendment to section 405.050, definitions and interpretation. And this is resulting from the January 20th Board of Aldermen meeting, where the city attorney and the board discussed guidelines for a new in-home daycare definition. And this will also affect the home occupation section and Appendix A. And you have the proposed, you have a letter where I've got the 2 drafts from the city attorney, sort of my recommendations on it, and then the proposed changes to the code. And some of the areas, you got a memorandum from the city attorney regarding his contact with the state of Missouri. And then I have the proposed changes in red, and just some areas that might need to be discussed or just verified, highlighted in yellow, trying to help you. Where some things were contradicting with each other compared to what Chris had wrote.
Well, I'd like to say that with respect to you know, I know the Board of Aldermen has already weighed in on the belief that home daycare with care of up to 10 children in a residential neighborhood is something that's needed in our community. I couldn't disagree more. I do agree that that daycare in general is something that's important to our community and to working families. I feel, however,
that to allow up to 10 children to be cared for in a home daycare in a residential neighborhood is a huge mistake. Huge mistake. And we won't really get to see the kind of problems that it creates until Pandora's box is already open. I very much appreciate what our aldermen do, and I very much appreciate the deliberative process that we go through when we legislate for our city. And with all due respect to all of those members of the Board of Aldermen, I worry that in an effort to be agreeable and to be supportive of people that are trying to do good things in our community, we haven't had enough strength to say no when we need to say no. And so my personal opinion is that we should not be going down the road of 10 children in a home daycare in residential neighborhoods. And I'm going to vote no on this, not because the way that it's written isn't well written, but because the concept itself, I think, is going to be a long-term problem for the residents in the community that don't want to have 10 children at their next door neighbor's house all day, every day. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else having questions or comments?
I think I tend to agree with what Scott said. There are a number of residences in the city that are fairly close together. And 10 children in houses that are sandwiched close together could be a real problem for neighbors. So, especially if those children are outside in good weather. So I tend to agree with what Scott has said.
I was reading in there somewhere where it was given so many square footage that the house could only have so many square footage provided for daycare. And just some quick math on it, it appeared to me that with 10 children in say a 1,400 square foot house, they only got about 3 foot square to work in.
They're small children.
They better be real small children.
I learned to do Singapore, man.
And residential home child daycare, they're calling it daycare, and then they go down right down here and talk about it's for a 24-hour period. Just residential home child care, as far as interpretate to me would be better, but I agree. I don't think it ought to be in a residential area.
And under the current ordinance, you can have in a residential area up to 4 that are not related. Is that correct?
It's my understanding, yes.
And this says 10, including those related. Correct?
Yes.
So you can only have 10, period.
Right.
So you're really kind of looking at semantics there. If somebody already has 3 or 4 kids, but they're wanting to make money by watching others, you're going to be up to, with 4 others, you're up to 8. 8, 10, it's, depending on how you read the law, what's there right now, you can get up to 8 or 9 children that are in the home every day, all the time.
Well, you could have a family that's got 12 kids.
Well, that's what I mean. So.
And not have a home daycare. But as a general rule, I think those of all of us, when we choose our neighborhoods, we have a reasonable expectation that it will continue to be like it is. And if no offense to Mr. Deach, but if I bought the house next door to him and decided that I was wanting to put a daycare in, that might be a nuisance, whether I have any kids of my own or not. And to me, it's about the integrity of the neighborhoods. I don't have any reservations at all about the good intentions of people that provide daycare. I just feel like, as a community, we all have some reasonable expectations of what our neighborhood environment will be. And while there might be, like I said, a family of 12 kids, and they may be the biggest pains in the neck that you can have as neighbors, and there may be a daycare with 10 kids that are quiet as church mice, and we never even know they're there. But we know there will be other situations that are quite the opposite. And to me, I feel our responsibility and the responsibility of the Board of Aldermen is to preserve the integrity of the community and to give all of us as residents the ability to enjoy the places where we live. And I fear that this is going to create an unintended consequence that is not going to be very positive.
Jack, doesn't the town allow people to have so many children on daycare now?
I
4.
believe the state of Missouri, you can have up to 4
I mean,
before it's considered a daycare.
and that's good with the town too, right?
I'm
mean,
not sure I understand
Well,
the question.
or the town accepts that.
I believe.
We use the same guideline.
Right.
As far as code
Okay.
enforcement, if that was your
Okay.
question. Up to 4 is not what's considered by the state as a daycare, so that's
Yeah.
also
It's
not
not
considered by
regulated.
the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
So, as is always the case, we have to make our motions in the affirmative, so I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the amendment to section 405.050.
Second.
Who seconded it?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Costello, seconded by Mr. Dickey, to approve the section 405.050 of the definitions dealing with daycare, the residential home child daycare. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Dickey?
No.
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Deach?
No.
Mr. Cullum?
No.
Mrs. Scott?
No.
And Mr. Barton?
No. So the motion fails 6-0 with 3 absents, and that will come in front of the board
On the
as well,
17th.
On the 17th. Thanks for everybody's input. Next order of business will be section 405.210, home occupations.
This is the proposed text amendment to section 405.210, home occupations, ADM 74, which was making the changes to include the in-home daycare.
Well, I think the discussion of this amendment is effectively elementary to the last question. So unless there's a lot of discussion about it, I'd again make a motion to recommend approval of section 405.2, what is that one? 10, as submitted.
And you said this was the same as well?
Well, I think this is just the amendment to the,
And the next appendix one
to
as
the,
well.
to the occupation. Adding the
Residential
incidental
home
use.
daycare,
Yeah,
child daycare into it.
right.
I second it.
So we have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Dickey. Once again, to approve the 405.210 of home occupations text amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Deach?
No.
Mr. Cullum?
No.
Mrs. Scott?
No.
Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Dickey?
No.
Motion fails 6-0 with 3 absents. And that will also come from the board on the 17th. And the last order of business will be the Appendix A listing of permitted and conditional uses.
It's the proposed text amendment to Appendix A, ADM 75, which would include the definition of in-home daycare into the appendix, and it was to be presented as a conditional use within any zoning districts that allow residential, single-family structures.
And once again, this is part and parcel to the same conversation we've been having, so I will make a motion to approve the amendment to Appendix A as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Deach to approve the Appendix A, listing permitted and conditional uses to the text amendment. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Deach?
No.
Mr. Cullen?
No.
Mrs. Scott?
No.
Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Dickey?
No.
And Mr. Costello?
No.
Motion fails 6-0 with 3 absence. And that will end the regular session of the Planning and Zoning meeting. We'll open up the floor to the Planning and Zoning Officer's report at this time.
The only thing that I have so far for next month's meeting is a request for site plan and conditional use approval to convert an existing home into a duplex.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
I would just like to say, I recognize that a lot of work, time, and effort went into preparing these amendments that we just pretty, I think, soundly spoke against. And I don't want the fact that we didn't want to see these things go through in any way diminish our appreciation for the work that was done to present this to us. I think all of us are here with the absolute best intentions for our community and for the people that we're here to serve. And I hope that the Board of Aldermen can look at the discussion that we had and recognize that this isn't anything more than us trying to do what we believe is in the best interest of our city. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that when we unanimously reject an issue, it does require supermajority by the Board of Aldermen. Is that not correct? Do you know?
That would be a Mr. Graville question.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that.
But again, we don't sit here looking forward to say no to everything. I just felt like this particular issue had the potential to turn into something that we didn't really intend.
Good comments. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group? Entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Deach.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Scott to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks for coming out and have a good evening.